Welcome to the Alma podcast, Archiving Latino Memories and Achievements, a podcast where we highlight local leaders and their stories. My name is Estela, and on this episode, we'll be interviewing Homero Mejia, District 6 Modesto City School Board member, father, and longtime community member. Please help me welcome Homero Mejia. Hi,
Awesome.
Homero. How are you?
Well, I'm great. Thank you for the invitation. I was really looking forward to be here in this space with you in this podcast. So my name is Homero Mejia, as Stella already mentioned, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in Mexico. I was born in 1979. I'm about to turn 47 years old this next month or so here. So my story kind of begins there, a little bit about who I am. I'm one of 12 children. I'm the fourth oldest. I migrated to the United States at the age of 1. I don't recall that trip to the United States because I was one year old. Second time we came for 1 year and then we went back. I don't remember those because I was a baby. But then the second time, for economic reasons, my family decided to migrate back to the United States in 88.
And did you migrate straight to Modesto, or how did you come to be in this community?
No, so my town, I was born in Aguililla, Michoacan, which is a small rural town in Michoacan. Most everybody from my hometown moved to Redwood City, California. So Redwood City is the place where folks from where my hometown moved there first. So we moved there, and that was like the place where my dad knew people. And he had been coming to the United States as an immigrant since the 70s. So he'd been back and forth. And so Redwood City was like the place. We were there for about a year or so. And there were several things that shaped a little bit of why we moved from the Bay Area to Modesto. One, of course, is economics. The reason why we moved, it was for economics. And so when we went to Redwood City, it's still more expensive, right? And so we used to live in a basement, in a house in a basement on 5th Avenue, right in the heart of Redwood City. And so my parents decided to move us back to Modesto about a year in. After we were there for about a year, they decided to move us. So we moved to South Modesto. So I went to attend Bret Harte Elementary School for about 4 months. And then from there, we moved to Westside. And most of my life, I grew up in Westside. And I attended Robinson Road Elementary. And then from there, Mark Twain Middle School. And then Modesto High. And then Modesto Junior College. And then Stanislaus State. That was kind of like my educational kind of trajectory.
Your journey.
At the beginning of my life there.
So actually one of our co-hosts, Andrea, is from Redwood City as well.
Oh, wow.
And her
That's
family's
cool.
from Michoacan as well. So you guys have a lot in common.
Maybe we'll catch up in the future and see what part of Michoacan she's from.
And so when you were living in Redwood City, was it already like all of you already, or how many of your siblings were already?
So it was almost everybody up to that point because we had more siblings born after we came to the United States. My older brother stayed behind, but everybody else came. And then we had a few others that were born here in the United States. So we have in total, 4 of my siblings were born in the U.S. One was born in my first trip to the United States, which was in 81. He was born here. And then we moved back, and then we came back. And so the last 3, the youngest ones, were born here after we arrived in Modesto.
Yeah.
And of course, we have agriculture background. In Mexico, we used to also plant corn and pumpkins and jicamas and I love a bunch of stuff. So when we got here, Modesto was a familiar place because it was agriculturally based. So my parents found jobs in agriculture. And so that was like a no-brainer, I guess, for the transition from the Bay Area, Redwood City to Modesto.
So I've mentioned before that I'm the oldest of 6 siblings. And so I have 5 other siblings. And how was that like for you growing up in a big family? Did you enjoy it? Were there things that you were like?
Yeah, I can tell. I try to tell the story to people. I don't remember ever sleeping by myself as a child because there's always people. There was nowadays, kids have their own rooms. I did not know what my own room was most of my life. And so it was always fun. It was always kind of chaotic because there was always something going on. But it was fun memories for us. We were always playing. We were always working, doing stuff. So my parents had a strong work ethic. So they always had us doing stuff early on in our childhood. So I would do, in Westside Modesto, we would sell stuff out on the streets, corn, cheese, whatever we could make or get our hands on. Yeah. We would go out there and after school, we would go home, eat, and then we would go off and do some of that in the community.
Do you think growing up in a big family made you the social person that you are? Because I feel like you're really good. You're a really good people person.
I think I learned a lot from my dad. My dad was, I think, one of those early influences in your life of what kind of person you're going to become. And my dad doesn't know how to write very good or read very good, but he is the epitome of socializing. He remembers everybody's name. He remembers everything by just memory. He's very good at math. And so I think I picked up a lot from him early on. And I thought at the beginning, I thought he knows everybody. And people said, your dad knows everybody. And so now in retrospect, I'm about to turn 47 years old. And then people tell me some of the things I used to tell my dad. It feels like you know everybody. So I feel like there is some familiarity about socializing that I learned from my dad early on. I'm interact with so many people, and just the way he showed up was very important. I think that shows up throughout my life and my leadership journey that I hope we get into in a little bit.
So a little bit of context. I've known Homero since I was 14 years old. Now I'm 26, and I've worked alongside him in the nonprofit space and the community space. And so something that I really admired of you, and I've told you this so many times, is your empathy, but also your understanding of people. I feel like in a workspace, sometimes there's slackers or there's people in the workspace that aren't contributing. And I feel like you were always super graceful in the way that you handle situations. And you're always the person to give everyone the benefit of the doubt versus me. I'm like, oh, I don't know. I feel like they're playing in my face. But with you, it was always like, no, there's always an explanation. How do you explain that? Why do you think that's something that you hold?
Yeah, I think just thinking about it right now and reflecting over the year, I think a lot has to do with, I think my dad again and my dad and my mom were like, they were always helping out at their local church. They were always socializing and helping. And so I feel like my dad had never really had anything ill to say about people. And he always saw the positive in people. So I feel like I kind of subconsciously inherited that a little bit. I feel like also I had a lot of doubts when I was growing up. And so I felt inadequate for a long period of time in my life. And so I feel like I didn't want to feel that way. So I wanted to give people the benefit of the doubt. I feel like they could come out eventually if you believe enough in them. Sometimes the belief that other people believe in you sometimes carries that. And I feel like maybe early on, my dad taught me a little bit of that, but also experiencing not being so sure of yourself and a little chip on your shoulder, like all that stuff. So I feel like that could have contributed to me. I was just seeing the good in people and saying, let's give them another chance. Let's work with them. Don't forget that every person has their own story. And sometimes we want people to be where we're at based on their life. It might take them a little longer to get to where you sometimes want them to be at.
I've learned a lot from you working directly with you, and you were my boss at one point, which is so crazy to say now because my mom always says, oh, tu papá Homero. Like I saw your tu papá Homero at church and stuff. So I feel like I've always come to cherish the time that we spent together working. And then now I feel like we're friends. We chit chat and we talk to each other, and you were my first mentor. But
I don't know. I know that we're not supposed to tell these stories. I don't know. It's supposed to be a story a little bit about me, but I do think like when I met you at 14, that is also a prime example. Like most people at 14, like you would think like you're not going to invest in people at 14 years of age. I saw some spirit in you. I know we had a very heated discussion with your aunt about voting. I remember that was like our first interaction. It was, I think I was trying to get young people to participate in voting and reaching out. And you really seemed like you lighted up a little bit, that you seemed like there was something in you. That was kind of really cool for me. It was an experience. And I felt like you were hungry to be involved. And maybe you didn't know where it was going to lead you. And it's been an honor to walk alongside of you over this so many years. And of course, I admire probably as much as you think you have contributed to your life, you have contributed to my life in this space. And I don't know, has been how you said 14 to 26. How much is that?
A little bit over 10 years.
Yeah. So
I know.
Seeing you grow up and mature has been one of those wonderful opportunities that I've had with you and of course other people, but you've been one of those folks that have stayed with me and we continue to be in contact. Even though when you went away to college, we were still communicating and talking to each other.
Thank you, Homero. I appreciate that. And I know I'm not the only one in the community. I feel like you're really popular and you've definitely mentored a lot of people. You're one of those people that I feel like when I name drop, everyone always just brightens up. In any situation, even with funders, in every space that I'm in, I feel like someone knows you. And I think that's super special, which I wanted to come back to. You mentioned something about feeling inadequate, and I wanted to talk about your leadership journey a little bit. When were those times that was it at school, education, like where did that inadequateness feeling come from?
I think also being a big part of a big family, you're like in the middle. You say you're the oldest. I was in the middle. Your brothers and sisters came before, two older brothers and an older sister. So they're always, they're first, they're older, they're doing all this stuff. So you're kind of in the middle. You're kind of not forgotten, but kind of overseen, you know. And also, to be honest, I was kind of small when I was young, but then there was a period of time when I also gained weight and did all that. So that a lot of that also came during that. I wasn't a very good speaker. I also stumbled, and I also had issues speaking clearly. And sometimes I would speak really fast. And so I didn't have a very good speaking ability when I was growing up. So also that didn't help very much to have that going on. So that I feel like those insecurities came during that. Also, I was a little bit behind in school. So I wasn't the strongest reader. I wasn't definitely not the strongest writer. My penmanship is to be desired. What can I say? But it is part of who I am and part of what shaped me. And those were some of the doubts I had early on in my educational journey. But there were some key moments when that came and helped me shape. So I got to think back. Fifth grade, we had the teacher, Mary. She really started to believe in me and then kind of pushed me a little bit moving forward. Then from there, I had another science teacher at the middle school that was also like, there would be pouring Ms. Larson. I remember her name was Larson, always pouring into me as well. And then in high school, I definitely had several teachers there. That was her unmarried name, was Ms. Benjamin. She was like the student teacher, and she also believed a ton. It was the first time I even hear about going to college was from this teacher, and I feel like it kind of shaped me. But prior to that, what really shaped me was 1994. I got to say, that has been one of the most crucial. I was young. I was 14 years old. At the time, we had Proposition 187. So Proposition 187 passed during that time, 1994. Pete Wilson was the governor at the time, and I was undocumented. I was a freshman, coming into freshman. And of course, growing up in elementary school, middle school, my status wasn't like something that was in my mind. I was undocumented. That wasn't it. But when that hit, everybody in the community was talking about it, similar to what's going on at this moment in time. Everybody was talking about it. And then it was just so much. And so I was afraid. I had lots of doubts. Everybody was talking, and I didn't have, at 14 years old, you don't have a lot of things figured out. Talking about 14 when we met, and so there was some murmuring about doing a protest or a walkout, and I was afraid of my parents would be mad at me if I did that. But there was a lot of momentum from young people at Modesto High School, and they said, "Hey, we're gonna walk out because this is a protest. It's unfair proposition." And that was my first time that I feel like I took a leap of faith. And with all the fear, I was afraid of getting caught by the police, doing all that jazz. But also I was afraid my parents would get me in trouble as well. And it ended up being one of those things that shaped me for the rest of my life. There was older folks that were there saying stuff to us that was positive, and believing like change could come in the future. It was one of those moments. And I remember marching down like 7th Street Bridge. We walked there, and there's a picture that they took of us. There were, I don't know, in the 2,000 range of students that walked out. And then my brothers for some odd reason, were driving down close to where the march is. And I got to see them, and they honked, and I felt like they were just proud of me for doing it. So I feel like that moment really kind of cemented something in me that later kind of awoke with community organizing and other parts of my journey down later when I got out of college. And
was that the moment where you first felt like a leader?
Yes, I think that was without thinking about it, like the word leadership, I think it didn't come into my psyche or like that later in my life. It wasn't until I think maybe college that the word leader really started resonating with me. Because when I was in high school, I didn't consider myself as a leader, but I remember taking the leadership to do that. That's leadership, but I just didn't know it was happening. And so that's sometimes what I think with young people nowadays, sometimes we doubt ourselves, and the word leader kind of scares us a little bit. People have put so many things behind it.
Now it's crazy to think back at that moment, because now you work at a school. And what do you do in your current position?
I work with a lot of young people, ages 12 to all the way to senior in high school, almost 18 years of age. Mm-hmm. So that's the range that I work with. So I interact with them on a daily basis. So I get to interact and hear from them what's going on. And of course, never catching up with what's in. It's always like I feel like I'm behind, but they're always patient enough to teach me, this is what this means. So it's kind of fascinating, but I'm very intentional how I show up for them, because I feel like as adults and people in leadership, how you show up matters to young people and how you believe in them early on. Because believe it or not, like all of us have our doubts and we're shaping who we are going to be in the future when we're in middle school. And so I get an opportunity to be in front of these young people all the time and really begin to believe in them, important to them by just the words or how we show up, and makes a big difference in their lives.
You're listening to the Alma podcast, a KCBP 95.5 FM community radio production, and we are interviewing Homero Mejia. We both come from the education space, and I think something that I hear a lot is that we need more male role models, positive role models for young men. And I feel like I'm really grateful that you're in those spaces. So what is the best piece of advice you've ever received that you would share with young Latinos or the young children that you work with, or other people that are struggling and finding themselves or their purpose?
Yeah, that's a very, very hard question to just answer with a simple answer. A piece of advice, I feel like it's more than just a piece of advice. Mm-hmm. It's just a combination of things. One of them is truly caring for every individual you come across, because you don't know what impact you're going to have in their life that moment. And I'll give you an example of that. Hundreds of students are coming into school, and then sometimes a student maybe not having the best day or something, but sometimes just noticing them, seeing them. And I feel like sometimes with whatever we can call it, with media, social media, phones and everybody, I feel like people are not seen, they're just lost. And so when you see people just see their humanity, I think it makes a huge difference. That does. But I feel like back to what advice you give, that's a hard one. I'll think of a few things that I will say to them is, you are enough. You are enough. Sometimes we feel like we need to prove ourselves, and we do not. We do not need to prove ourselves to anybody. We are enough. We are enough as we were created. We are enough the way we are. And then where the life is going to take us is going to be up to us and the decisions that we make. But I feel one of the biggest advice is you are enough. And I heard that from many people that kind of were older, had walked the journey of social justice, have been involved for a long time. Teachers that were like in college and stuff. All the doubts, it was like when people say, you are enough. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. That's, I feel like, the biggest advice to tell young people, because I feel like they judge themselves to something, and sometimes to the main society, to whatever it may be, but they feel like they need to match up to something. They don't. You are enough as you are created. You are enough as an individual. You are worth it. And so that's very important. My best advice is, don't compare yourself to anyone, because you are unique. There is no one like you. And every person is unique and has the potential to do so many things. But the doubts sometimes is what kind of keeps you from that potential.
That's really special. I think, especially today, in today's world, where Latinos are being villainized, where everything, the rhetoric around our communities are super negative. I think there's more of that pressure, maybe to feel like we belong here, right? To prove ourselves that we deserve to be here. And that's a really important message.
One more thing I would say is, learn your history. Learn that the land where you're standing, where you are at, it's from your ancestors. You've been here. Like, it's not like you migrated here. You are part of this land. Once you realize and you understand the historical context, we're in California, we're in the Central Valley. This land used to belong to the country where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. You're in a foreign land. But sometimes I feel like if you don't have that type of understanding, then that's where the doubts come in as well. You feel like you don't belong, but you are in your ancestors' land.
I think even what you were saying earlier, when that proposition was passed, and you're like, you said something along the lines of similar today. And it's so crazy to think we've been here in this place in history before, and it's like recreating. So I think something that I learned from Marvin Jacobo, who we both know in the community, we've been here before, and we just have to learn from the successes there.
And I feel like, I don't know if I at least in my mind, my analysis, I'm not a political analyst, but I do think what happened in 1994 had very strong repercussions to who represents us at the state level. It does. Because if you look of who's elected to office at the state level, lots of immigrants, second, first, and generation immigrants are becoming elected officials and doing all that. I think it came out from that. Maybe there were kids back then, or their sons are now stepping into those spaces. In the positive of all this villainizing immigrants and all this hatred that you're seeing, also will come opportunity for young people to believe in themselves. Maybe that would happen to me when I was 14, that I'm able to run for office and do all these things because of those moments that sometimes some people feel are hopeless. Is hope out of the ashes, things will come. Some years from now, we will see the positives that came out of this, all this negativity and all this racism and all this villainizing of our immigrant community.
It's a perfect segue because I wanted to talk a little bit about you running for office, and what was your inspiration or a key moment that pushed you to run for office?
I have several key moments, but I started doing community organizing in 2005. And so we always work with community and walk with community. And I feel like more of the fearless people have been immigrants. They're just fearless in so many ways. They get up every day. They work hard every day. They put in extra effort. They do everything and they're happy, and then they're going after it. And sometimes you have potentially more, and then you have all this doubt. And these communities have been constant. So 2005, started doing work around voting, around different community organizing issues. And then I came to Modesto in 2007, and then I started meeting so many people, so many young people, and always in the process of this community organizing, building relationships, we always tell people, we want you to one day run for office. I will always feel like I was in the background for community meetings. I was doing the background work, and I always tell people, hey, one day you should run for office and all these things. And many years passed by, and then I remember there were several meetings. You were probably in several of them that happened. And I remember an immigrant mom just said, you always talk about running for office. How come you don't run for office? And I was like, oh. I was like, okay, you know. And then I started seeing these young people need to see someone that looks like them also run for office. Role modeling is important, and so venture into that. I think there was a combination of I've been doing work for a long time in community organizing, and then I have told these young people, one day you should run for office, and one day you should run for office, and then until they challenged me and say, what about you? Why don't you run for office? And so in 2017 is when I did my first time running for office. But I think it was a combination of all these immigrants that I've been working for so many years, that they would see a first generation undocumented in 10th grade with lots of doubts, lots of things. And now having the opportunity as now becoming a citizen. I became a citizen when I was in college. And so to run for office, not even that long after becoming a citizen, it was pretty unique to lead by example instead of just saying you should do this, jumping in. And I feel like representation matters. So how you show up. And when I introduce myself all the time, I introduce myself, I'm an immigrant. I was born in another country. And I feel like why that important is because I want other immigrants to say nothing is impossible if you really want it. Yeah. And I hope it doesn't take you as long as it took me. Hopefully early on you realize you are enough. Your ideas, what you bring to the table is very important because you bring your immigrant fire and hunger, and then you understand you're acculturated into this country and you bring all that together into one. And I feel like you're like very strong, or even stronger than just Native-born folks.
Communities are super resilient. I feel like I work with families, and sometimes there's times where I feel a little bit down in the dumps, and they for sure inspire me. And yeah, the way that they carry themselves, it's always super inspirational.
I can think of, I know I don't want to get it super emotional, but I remember as we were working for immigration reform, maybe there's so many years, one of the stories that kind of to this day I always hold is a story of a immigrant mother that was pregnant through the desert, and stepping up and knowing she was undocumented, is just speaking out in public. And speaking out when we had this community forums, that to me is just the epitome of leadership, the epitome of not being, talk about the journey, like you carry your child to potentially die in the desert and you made it through and you're here and you have all this, you're just resilient. I mean, it doesn't get more resilient than that. You could have lost your life in that journey, and yet you took all that and you came into this country and you make the best of it.
Yeah, and then to become an advocate, a public advocate, and share your story, that's super vulnerable.
100%.
What legacy do you hope to leave behind through your work and contributions?
First of all, we gotta give a shout out. There's so many people where we stand on their shoulders to be able to do what. There's so many people that work so hard for us to be able to do stuff that we're able to do today. But I also feel like whatever decisions you make right now, you got to think 3, 4, 5, 6 generations from now. Like how are things going to be different for them, and the decisions that you make today are going to make that. So how you show up, I think, is going to be very important. That you were like the first, maybe you opened the door to being like the first on some things, right? And that's gonna that down the road, someone's gonna look up and say, "Oh my God!" In this 2017, 2020, whenever it was, 20 years from now, people are gonna be reading on this, and hopefully continue to be inspired to say, "Hey man, this person did it, and they were not even born in the U.S. and they were able to do it." So my hope is that my legacy would be that go after it, go get it, do it. There's nothing stopping you. Are enough. Like knowing if someone doesn't have to have the title, doesn't have to write good, doesn't have to speak good. It just has to have the heart to serve and love for their community. I think I hope that would be the legacy for a long time. Whatever you do it for the love of your community, of your family, of just, if it's Modesto, wherever you're at, because hopefully there's representation and there's folks elected all over and becoming leaders, and not just in elected positions, but we need leaders everywhere. Who better than those that have a strong desire to help, and not just for their own good, but for the benefit of everybody.
How do you continue to grow and evolve as a leader now in your life?
Well, I think that's a very tough question, and at the same time, it's a question that every day it's ongoing, and it changes. I think I'm getting a little older. If you would ask me that like maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I would have told you like a different response now. And then I would say one of the biggest things is continue to be close to the community, continue to be close to people, because I believe in community organizing, the further you are from the pain, the more you philosophize. The further you are from what's happening, you philosophize more. You have theories, you have ideas, but the more you stay close to where you're standing in solidarity with folks, I think that's where it's at.
That's so interesting that you say that, because I feel like when I left, so during high school, I worked alongside of you in the nonprofit space. We were doing voting, immigration stuff. And so I feel like when I left to college and I was like in sociology and all of those things, and then I took my first theory class, they were talking about the same things that we used to talk about, but in very academia language. And it's so crazy to be like, oh yeah, I already know these things, but in a different way, right? Like you see it in a community member, you see it in an immigrant mom, and then them talking about it in academia in a way, which I feel like one can say it's super, like you say, theoretical in comparison to when you're in community and you're in the boots on the ground type of work.
Yeah, I think one of the things is learning is, you mentioned that already, but I feel like right now, this is the time where you got to get grounded. You got to stand with people. You got to be, sometimes you need to people need to feel like you're standing with them. And I think learning not just from a book or from an article, but learning to not just provide answers, but just kind of, sometimes people just need to know that you got them. I still get phone calls from folks we worked with in 2012 during DACA 13, 14. People are still calling me like if it was yesterday, like, oh, my kids are off to college and you're doing this. We helped doing that. So I feel staying grounded is one of the biggest things to continue to grow. It's because the times will change, but I think people, communities, what's happening will keep you grounded. And I feel like that's one of the things that where I work and where you live or where you spend your time with, like all that, it matters. And so this day, at least once a week, I'm just getting, hey, you have an attorney, is someone who can you refer me to? And so I feel like that's one of the things that keeps me growing and learning, is just staying close to the community that needs you when you're there. And then also having to make decisions, that benefits the present and the future of Modesto. And at least in my position, reading up and making decisions, not just on sometimes numbers and things you did, on community, on what you're seeing on the ground. It's what I feel like that's one of the ways to keep learning.
Yay, thank you. We're wrapping up here, but one last question. What projects or initiatives are you currently working on that are exciting to you, that are filling your cup?
Oh, But right now we're definitely in the middle of we're in the middle of graduations now. All those things usually are like super awesome. But one of the biggest things is, as in my position, we're building so many new things because of the leadership in our board. We help with the, of course, with the community supporting it. We have passed many bond measures, and we're investing in schools that haven't been invested in so long. Also, diversifying who are the staff members that are teaching our children. That's going to be very important. So we have a very strong initiative that's exciting. That the teachers, the staff that is teaching our children also represent them. So that's a big initiative that we're doing in the community. And other things that excite me that I know that I'm not directly working out, but that excite me that I know is in the most chaotic of moments. That's when I see more people right now becoming citizens. I feel like that's going to be a huge thing I want to continue to invest in, is helping people become citizens, go through the process, active vote, do all that. And of course, I'm excited about this election cycle, this election season as well, because I do feel like that's one way we can stand against what's happening around the country.
Thank you so much, Homero. We really appreciate you coming on, and I personally really appreciate you being our first interview. So thank you.
No, it's been a pleasure, and of course, it's been an honor. And like I said, I'm so grateful to being invited and honored, because what it means to our community that you were. I'm the first one, but I'm hoping that you're going to interview hundreds of, because I feel like that's what makes a community strong. It's not just one person. I think there's lots of people doing amazing and incredible work. And sometimes they don't want to be called leaders, but sometimes at least in my experience, is their leadership is how you show up. And a lot of people are showing up every day doing incredible things, and no one's noticing. Sometimes in positions, sometimes people just think of leaders in positions, but they don't understand we have lots of leaders in neighborhoods, in communities, and even in companies. They're doing incredible work and supporting their fellow immigrant communities. And I feel like hopefully through this podcast, like many folks will get inspired and continue to do good work.
Thank you so much for tuning in. This was an episode of the Alma podcast, Archiving Latino Memories and Achievements. Before we hop off, I did want to share our Instagram at Alma Interviews. And if you have an inquiry or want to get in touch with us, our email is alma.podcast0@gmail.com. Before I hop off, I did want to leave everyone with the quote from Angela Davis. I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I am changing the things I cannot accept. Thank you.